It's on my radar. All right.
And no, I'm really happy to see you again. We've got a couple of things about Reddit that I want to talk about. But I wanted to include Jim into the understanding of the lineage that he's becoming introduced to. There was another situation in the early 30s, actually before this, where he actually got into disputes with the Pali scholars who were teaching at the big, let us call it, universities that mostly monks, but lay people could also attend. That was at Thammasat University. We're talking about, gosh, nearly 100 years ago now. And that he left the school because he disagreed with some of the teachings that they were giving in the school. And here's what's going on with that. That within the Thai Sangha, there are everyone who joins the Thai Sangha, who becomes a monk, normally comes out of Thai culture and the Thai cultural understanding of Buddhism. And in Thai cultural understanding of Buddhism, it is a religion. And that the religious aspects of it have to do with building temples and supporting the monks and telling the women that they will ride on the coattails of their sons if they can get their sons ordained. And so there's an entire set of superstitions that are based in that that had originally gotten the Thai people to support it. Now, one could also argue that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa has contributed then to the downfall of Buddhism in Thailand by letting the real understanding of the teaching of the Buddha out. And yet, this family that I'm in, Tam's family, is a really, really excellent example of Thai families that do not attend the temple. They don't go to the temple. They don't go to any ceremonies. But their lifestyle would be, let us say, spectacular and high quality, higher than the average Christian who goes to church 3-4 times a week in America. That their mentality and their way of thinking, etc., like that, and that it has seeped now into the general population, that there are no gods, or if there are gods, they're irrelevant, and that there is no point in thinking about karma being after one's life. You see, in the old days, if people were poor, here in Thailand, the same as in India, that I mentioned a little bit in that piece that we were talking about under the name of dangerous theories, is the dangerous theory of karma has lost much of its danger now here in Thailand because people do not see the bad states that they wind up in as unremitting because of old karmic influences. That they're moving out of that mentality, that they're not stuck in it the way that was thought for many centuries. But inside the Sangha has always been the real core teachings of the Buddha. They have never been lost. That Bhikkhu Buddhadasa never ever claimed that what he was teaching, he found out all on his own. That he would point back to other teachers, older monks, etc., like that. So the actual way of looking at it is that the original teaching of the Buddha has been kept. It's been kept quiet. It's been kept secret, and it's been kept alive in the Sangha for these past 2,500 years, while it's been encapsulated and contained within this, let us say, gilded case called the Buddhist religion.
Mm-hmm.
And that what Achan Po has given me permission to do is to open that case on Skype and start letting Westerners know how to actually gain advantage of the actual teachings of the Buddha. And that's, I can see your excitement in that. Well, that excitement will, let us say, dwindle into contentment and happiness soon enough.
I am also cool with that.
Because the actual teachings of the Buddha brings you see, the Westerners even fall into that because of the social, religious background that we can actually go back so far as to blame it on two people. One is Constantine and the other one is Paul, because Paul took Jesus' teachings and turned them upside down. That Jesus said, you can call on my name and you can cast out devils in my name, but if you don't keep the commandments, I will say, depart from me, for I never knew you. But then Paul comes along and he turns that upside down and he says things like, good, how can you be good? Only God is good. And that all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. There are no non-sinners, no, not one. And the only way that you can gain freedom from your past bad actions, called sin, is to accept Jesus as your Savior. Well, Jesus didn't teach that. But the teachings of Paul were incorporated into the state religion of Rome, and that you are still under the thumb of the Roman religion that was established by Constantine in order to control the crowds of the Roman Empire. The American society is now under that thumb. Now the thumb has changed colors over the centuries, but is now the evangelical thumb. But that evangelical thumb, I think, is actually in its last days. It's dying out. And that one of the reasons that it's dying out is because of public education. People are beginning to figure out that they are not, in fact, let us say, having to lick the backsides of religious people in order to feel good, that they can find other ways to feel good. And so, Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, I think, then, though he is contributing to the downfall of the Buddhist religion here in Thailand, he's actually bringing quite a lot of good. The last time I talked to Achan Po, well, maybe not the last time, a couple of years ago, he was saying that only about half the people who come to Wat Soan No even understand what Bhikkhu Buddhadasa was teaching. Well, he's got pretty high expectations. Because I was saying, wow, 50%, half of the Thai people who come actually get the point.
That's getting the point of that is actually pretty hard. Well,
exactly so. So this is the lineage that we are working through, is the lineage that goes right back to the Buddha, that the lineage has been alive and has been kept alive all of this time, has been passed down from one generation to another, but that a lot of, by the way, of the Buddhist Sangha is secret, but it becomes an open secret because of the fact that people will ordain, learn many of the secrets. Sometimes they become monks even for years and years. And then they will disrobe for one reason or another. And because now they're out in the community, then it just kind of slips out. Many of the rules or many of the ways of doing things and all of that. So that basically what it winds up is that it's the women who don't really know as much about Buddhism as the men do, because the men were the ones who were ordaining as monks and kind of got in on some of the stuff that was going on. But if you look at it like this, the life of a monk is paradise, because when I was a monk in the United States living in North Carolina, one of the things that was consistently asked of me by the Western people, having been introduced to religion through Christianity and Catholicism or whatnot, they would ask me, well, what are your duties? What are your jobs? And I would say, I do lunch. But even lunch is not an obligation. It's not a duty. It's just that's where the food is. And so we go and we sing our songs and whatnot like that and enjoy a party. But other than that, let us say that the duties that the monks have are small, but mostly to do with each other, that they take care of each other, that the old monks take care of the new monks in the sense of teaching them the ropes, and that the younger monks then take care of the older monks because they have so much respect for them. And so it really is truly a high-quality old boys club, and we're talking about in the sense of there's still probably maybe between 200,000 and 400,000 monks still here in Thailand, so it's not dying the way that you might think.
That's way more than I expected, actually.
Not so many Westerners. Westerners have a hard time fitting in, partly because of they see taking on the Vinaya or the Vinaya as an act of sacrifice rather than, let us call it dumbbells or barbells, the way that it should be used. That is, the Vinaya is a training, and that when you take the Dhamma and the Vinaya together, it really, really works very, very well. To where with the kind of teaching that I can do, I can only give you the Dhamma, and that whatever Vinaya or Vinaya that you take on, it's done by yourself, for yourself. But if you came and became a monk here in Thailand, you would have an entire support system for bringing your morality up to a very high standard quite quickly. And that I won't go into it today, but Noah understands the difference between what is the beginning path, the ordinary path, and what is the noble path. And the ordinary path starts with sila, samadhi, panya, but the noble path starts with panya, and because of that, that is what influences and gives us the sila, which winds up giving us unification of mind. But in the beginning, for new monks and for children, in fact, in Thailand, and you do this in the United States too, but you do it in a different way, but we give morality to students in the form of a set of rules. Rather than as wisdom. But as we grow in the Dhamma, we change all of those rules and throw them out, and rather bring them back in one at a time through deep inspection to figure out is that rule worth keeping or not. And so it becomes based in wisdom. Our morality becomes based in right view. But it does start with morality. Now, one of the things that I have seen happen, and it happened mostly with Ajahn Chah's group, that Ajahn Chah was really big on sila, or virtue, but there's a big difference between purification and perfection. But Western minds don't see much difference between that, and so they see that they even go so far as to think that their morality has to be perfect before they can progress along the path, and that's not true at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That as your morality improves slightly, so will your mental states improve slightly, and as your mental states improve slightly, also your views will begin to change. So it's a stepwise position rather than hard, fast, 100% perfect virtue, and then hard, fast, 100% purification of the mind. That really they work together, and that's an important difference in the way that I see the West. Is they go from one step at a time like this, rather than seeing what things build upon each other and work in that direction. So this is basically how the morality and the wisdom work together. So that in the beginning, morality is in charge and wisdom comes second. But as you progress along the path to, let us call, make a change of lineage, then it's turned upside down so that wisdom guides everything, including your choices about virtue. And the virtuous choice is based, in fact, not in virtue anymore, but it's based solely in wisdom with the understanding of what's causing suffering right now. What's going on, by the way, as an example, at our house now is that Kitty is actually quite sick. She's got the same cough that I've had, and she doesn't want to take the medicine.
Oh no.
And that my wife wants to kind of make her take the medicine because she's got in her mind that Kitty will suffer less if she'll take the medicine, not realizing that Kitty is suffering a whole lot when you make her take it. That we've got to somehow coax her into it, to get her to take it on her own, rather than making her take her cough syrup, etc. And so this is the point of view about suffering. As you see, is that if you make the child take the cough syrup so that they can be better later, that's off into the future. That's back into the law of karma again. But with Buddhists, the actual teaching of the Buddha is that the suffering is always here now in this moment. Making Kitty take her medicine is creating suffering. So this is the distinction, and so that's what, and you know, many teachers have talked about this. Ram Dass wrote a book called Be Here Now. Eckhart Tolle is big on this present moment. The Buddha also had that word, and he called himself that. The Tathagata means the one who's gone to now, or the thus gone one. He's gone to now. He's not living the way that ordinary people do in the past or the present, doing this to get that, remorsing over why we didn't get it last time, etc., and bringing it right down to this moment. This is where we actually live. And so the Tathagata comes from the Pali word tathata, and that it has been, by Riles Davies and others, translated as thusness. But when you translate it as thusness or thisness, kind of misses what really is going on with that. But we can go back and use these other things like Ram Dass's Be Here Now or Eckhart Tolle's This Present Moment. And we can understand that this is actually what the practice of Anapanasati is really all about, is to get the mind out of whatever states that it's in and get it into a joyous state in this moment, to eliminate and reduce suffering now. What suffering? The suffering that I was thinking about a minute ago. And I can drop those things and come to now and live in this present moment happily. Because all my worries and all my woes and all my troubles are not now. They're always either in the past or in the future. All of your troubles, by the way, the ones that you think of and dwell on the most, are things about the future or things about the past. And you're robbing yourself of living in this present moment happily.
That is actively making changes in my physical feeling right now.
So, how do you know Noah? You guys obviously are in vicinity with each other, which is unusual. Normally when I do dual Skype calls, one's in Alabama and the other one is in Moscow.
We're in Spuds.
We have a, I think I've told you about this. We have a group of meditation people that all hang out now in Seattle. And it all happened in the past 6 months or so, somewhat serendipitously. People on Reddit just started popping up, or on different online areas just started popping up and saying, I'm in Seattle, so am I. So now we meet weekly and hang out and, try to wade through the Dharma.
Yeah, it's nice to have like people to talk about with it, like a lot.
Hopefully on a super mundane level that where we can get at some stuff that wouldn't necessarily be discussed at Seattle Buddhist Center or whatever, what have you.
Yeah, it's
that's really great. One of the things that I would recommend is that you not wind up with a de facto leader, but let everybody be kind of on the same level, and that if any leadership arises, that will happen naturally and over a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
That let things be gentle in that regard, because if you look at it, that's in fact what happens with almost every religion, and that's what's happened with Buddhism when it's come to the West, is that you'll have stars. Mm-hmm. Like Berry Center has Joseph Goldstein as their big dude, their star. That the West Coast Spirit Rock has Jack Cornfield as the star, and that when you have individuals like that who become famous through fame grabbing activities, it winds up being money oriented. And so that's one of the things that I hope you guys can do is, even if it splinters, it's better to have your group splinter up than it is to try to keep it cohesive using ordinary tactics to make it cohesive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In other words, if you don't have a big enough space, don't try to get a big enough space.
Mm-hmm.
Do not let the Oedipus complex get into your way of doing things.
Uh-huh.
Okay? If you don't have enough space for everybody who wants to come, then break it up and let you meet in two different locations at the same time, or maybe the same location more often, so that people have the ability to keep the groups small, keep the groups more intimate and more friendly on an egalitarian or open level like that. That's one of the things that I would recommend. That in the time of the Buddha, in fact, everybody was called friend.
Mm-hmm.
That the hierarchy didn't get started until after the Buddha died, when he left, because it's very difficult to tell who's progressed. Mm-hmm. And so that's where the hierarchy of 5 years, 10 years, and 20-year systems got set up. To where if you're under 5 years, you're still under the wing of your upajjhaya or under your achans, under your teachers. After 5 years and up to 10 years, you're really actually on your own, and you can do what you want to do. From 10 years, then you can actually start taking on students as an achan, And after 20 years, then you can become the temple abbot and or become an upajjhaya, which means they able to ordain monks. Okay, so but that hierarchy is not the kind of hierarchy that you find in the military, to where after 6 months you get a promotion, or another 6 months, and you have all of these steps. No, you actually have only these few steps. But when monks have been monks for many, 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 many years, like the Kesatero, who was my upajjhaya, I don't know why they chose to do it that way, but it was extraordinarily auspicious, because he was the Samdet Sangha of South Thailand that I ordained under, which meant that he was already really an old man and had been upajjhaya to literally thousands of young monks, and had been... the last time I saw him again was about 2003, 2004, that period of time, and he was 107 years old then.
Yeah.
And still the Samdet Sangha of South Thailand. The word Sangha Raj, you can hear that word. You know what it means automatically. Think about it.
The great something in the
No,
Sangha.
not great. Royal.
Royal, okay.
Raj. Sangha Raj means the king of the monks.
The king of
There's
the
also
monks.
the word Samdet. Okay, so that's what it means. He's the Raja. He's the head dude in South Thailand. I think that they have only 6 Samdets. The next level down, by the way, just as a point of information, is called Chao Kun. Now, the word Chao means head or top, like Chao Wat is the head of the Wat. So Chao Kun means head of the people. And there's some place I don't really know, and I don't even know who keeps track of this, but the estimates are somewhere between 300 and 500 monks in Thailand are listed as Chao Kun. Buddhatat Bhikkhu Buddhadasa was a Chao Kun and had been for a long time. And that I was actually involved with one, his name is, that I knew him under was, I lost his name, I had it a minute ago, Prasert, Achan Prasert. Achan Prasert at that time, let us say as late as 2008, was the head monk of the temple in Fremont, California, and that's when he was given the title of Chao Kun. And so they changed his name, so now he's got a new name, but I think everybody will still remember him as Achan Prasert. But he was the first designated Thai monk as Chao Kun outside of Thailand. He was actually a monk in the United States, taking care of a big Thai Wat in Fremont, California, and he was designated Chao Kun. So that's a pretty big deal. So that's under the Samdet Sangha, and then you have Chao Kun, and then you will have other kind of senior monks, but then that will have to do more with longevity. Monks who have been monks for 40, 50, 60 years. In fact, now, Achan Po, he's 84, and he was ordained at 20, but he was a Samanan from childhood, so he's actually been a monk probably 75 years, but he's only claiming about 60 years. Because he's claiming it from the time of the full ordination. Full ordination is age 20. But the age, by the way, in Thailand is based in as conception rather than as birth. But you didn't know that, so actually it's 19 instead of 20. The age of 20 is from conception. That's how they do birthdays here in Thailand, which is a bit confusing, you know. So anyway, enough of the Sangha. One of the things that I do want to impress you about is that it is a full-blown, full-on organization.
Yeah.
We've actually been, we were talking about that just a little bit ago, about like what is it about Spuds that seems to work, and like if we were to try to copy it, what are the things? Because like we want to grow.
Our group, tongue in cheek, the acronym for it is Seattle Pragmatic Underground Dharma Society. To bring humor, from the start, so to speak, into it. Spuds. And our
we know where all those names come from. Exactly so. And it has, but one of the bigger qualities, and in fact, one of the things that you might want to do is to check. I don't know about Seattle, but you might want to check to see if there's a Thai temple there. And if there is, get to know the head monk.
Okay. Maybe you'll have to coach us on how to approach and interact most efficaciously, but...
Don't worry about that so much because of two reasons. One is that you've already been introduced enough to Buddhism so that you're probably not going to make any really gross mistakes. And number two, more importantly, he's in the United States, so he already knows where he is and who he's around.
Okay. Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that you need a whole lot of introduction to it. I would say don't sit down unless you're asked.
Okay.
And that it will actually be an honor if you do are invited to sit, because that means that now things are going to get good. The introductions are over. Okay, guys, sit down and we'll have a chat. Situation like that. And because I would really like to know what's going on within the Thai Sangha there in Seattle. I've been away from it. I've been now in Thailand. Surprisingly enough, it's been 6 years. I have not left Thailand.
Nice. That sounds really nice.
Yes, the last time I was there was in 2011, and I haven't been back since. And that's a kind of a blessing. It has to do with the visa. That the visa that I got in 2011 has been extended year by year by year without me having to actually leave the country, because I've got all of the right paperwork for the immigration service. The most important one is that you're an old man.
Yeah, there you go.
So, that's something that I would suggest that you do. Now, when you do that, if you get to the chance of talking to the head monk of any of the Thai temples that you'll find in Seattle, be sure very early to ask him the question, do you know Bhikkhu Buddhadasa? And it would be even more credit to your point if you use the Thai pronunciation of his name, Puttatat Bhikkhu.
Puttatat Bhikkhu.
And it would be even higher if you call him Tanachan Puttatat.
Tanachan Puttatat Bhikkhu.
Tanachan Puttatat. That's getting right up there with the right labels, etc.
Tanachan Puttatat.
All right, so we have...
I want to ask him if he knows Tanachan Puttatat. That will, if you can name drop, that's the name to drop.
He's gonna write that down. Okay, so I have one, and I've gone through these monasteries in the past, and I have not been to this one, but it's titled Attamaya Tarama. Yeah, Attamaya Tarama. Okay, and I have monk. They list monk availability. Ajahn Ritti, Ajahn Prayad, Ajahn Valop, and Amjan Somchai are at the temple. And then they list other...
Wow, they sound like they've got a big temple there. That's good. I would expect that.
Okay, awesome. And then... let me see if About Us yields any information. There was another... it looked like there might be another temple as well in this area, but it was all... the website was all in Thai. There was no... so, we'll have to get that one translated and let you know.
Yeah.
I do not think that there's a Lao temple in Seattle, because if there had been, I probably would have been invited to go there, because I was very much within the Lao culture when I was in the United States. I didn't avoid the Thai culture at all. As you know, I know many of the Thai monks, but just the fact that the United States is so huge. I mean, it's from Thailand here in the south, we can travel back up to Udon Thani, and we normally would do it in stages by public transportation to Bangkok, and then from Bangkok to Udon. But even though the map shows Thailand is very, very long because of the shape of the country, it's nothing compared to the United States. Thailand, you can set it as long as way, and you can put it that way, and it's like from, say, New York, and not even reaching Oklahoma. It would probably stop somewhere in Arkansas. So it's to get across the United States, it's quite a trip. 4 days, as far as I remember, in a car.
Yeah, that'd be booking it too.
And so I haven't been to Seattle, but I have spent some time with the Thai monks in California and also in Chicago. But mostly I spent time with the Lao monks, and they were more Texas, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, and more on the East Coast, Washington and Connecticut and Rhode Island. These are the places where I spent most of my time when I was traveling as a monk. Traveling kind of as an emissary, almost as a mascot. The Lao monks were very proud to have a Western man as part of their group. I was, as far as I know, the only one who, though I was ordained by Thai, I was still, in the Lao community, and so that's why I had an opportunity to travel like that, was because I had some good close friends. As a matter of fact, let me tell you an additional story about that. I don't think that I've even told you this story, that because High Point was close to Greensboro, I had already made a good connection with the Lao monks in High Point. And that one of the old monks in High Point was elderly, but he hadn't been a monk for very long. He actually didn't ordain as a monk until after he retired. So he came, say, in the early 80s, worked for a living until maybe around 2000 or a little later. And so he had a fairly substantial income in the form of Social Security. Not enough to live or survive in the United States, but for a monk who doesn't need the money, it's fairly substantial, you see. I think he may have gotten as much as $700 or $800 a month, which is not a lot, but that allowed us to do quite a lot of traveling. But he had come from Amarillo, Texas, and he had a younger brother who had been a monk from the age of 20. So now he's got a brother who had been a monk for like 35 years or so, and he was the temple abbot in the large Lao temple in Denver, Colorado. Well, when this guy ordained at the age of 65, the family wanted to make sure he was taken care of, and so they convinced one of the nephews to ordain. so that he could take care of his elder brother or his uncle. Now, that's unheard of in the West. Neither one of you guys would ordain as a monk if you weren't interested in Buddhism, but just ordained and gave up your social life, gave up your family life, gave up your sex life, gave up income just to take care of an uncle on the uncle's whim that he wants to be a monk. You guys wouldn't do that, but
No.
this Lao guy did. And so he was with it, and so he and I became really good friends because he had born in the United States, raised in the United States, spoke fluent English, and he became a student of mine just de facto. And so what happened is over time that he would go back to both his uncles in Colorado and his uncle that he lived with to verify the teachings that I was giving him, and they reaffirmed and verified that not only was I teaching, but I was teaching correctly, and I was teaching him the right things. And so he progressed in the Dhamma really, really well, because he had the family connections and all of that kind of stuff, and as far as I know, he's still a monk, he's still ordained. But that was extremely gratifying for me, because this was the first student that I was associated with as a student while he made the transition from ordinary life to the noble life. Mm-hmm. Right in front of me, right in front of his uncles, it was just brilliant. And so this is a really good story because of the affirmation, not only just the affirmation that the Lao monks know what the Dhamma is also, but that they let a Westerner teach their nephew so that he could get a different perspective than just what his family would be teaching him. Mm-hmm. And so it worked out really, really well. And I don't think I ever told you that story, Noah. But this guy is, I think, still a monk in Amarillo, Texas. And if you get a chance to find out anything about the Lao Temple in Amarillo, go for it.
Okay.
So that's an important quality. In fact, when I was in the United States, that's the question that I would ask. That was, in fact, one of the first conversations that I had with Ajahn Prasert in Fremont was, do you know Bhikkhu Buddhadasa? And immediately, that connection, because he was in on it. Same thing was true with Mahasamsak in Wat Greensboro. That, in fact, I decided to live at Wat Greensboro simply because I made that connection with the head abbot by asking him the right question. Mm-hmm. Do you know Bhikkhu Buddhadasa? The answer is, come right in. As opposed to, well, I've heard about him, but that kind of thing. That means that, so in that regard, you can also figure out that there was a time in Buddhism when that incrustation happened. Mm-hmm. Before that time, because of the time of the Buddha, and because of the fact that he was royalty, and that he was well known before he became a monk, and then when he was a monk, in the various traditions that he had, he was still well known, so that when he actually became enlightened or noble, that he had already a good set of connections. From that time then, almost all of the people who ordained at the time of the Buddha did so because they understood that the Sangha provided them a really easy life, a really easy way out of all of the hassles of the world. Mm-hmm. By living simply, living easy, and having support that, in fact, in the very early days, the monks lived under a tree. They didn't have huts. But the hut system started very quickly because during the time of the Buddha, many supporters were willing to, for instance, get Jeta's Grove. The Deer Park in Isitanya was already well known by the mendicants and the religious seekers of the time, but it eventually became almost completely a Buddhist hangout. Same thing happened in Varanasi at Jetta's Grove. Anthropitica was a banker, and he was quite wealthy, and he made a deal with the prince to buy this game reserve so that the monks could use that. Well, then that's when the huts started happening, because if a really wealthy man is going to give all this land, then I can at least build a hut for a monk or two. So that tradition got started. Fast forward then 100 years in fact. And I know this because it is now really strong evidence that the Buddha died somewhere between 400 and 410 BC, with the best date is 407 BC. This is based upon recent research, and that the older research had him perhaps 80 years before that. We also know that King Asok was, the coronation was in 311 BC. So he was already an emperor by 311 BC. We're only talking 100 years, and we also understand that Asok's great-grandfather knew the Buddha. But it was during the time of Asok when the Sangha got royal patronage, and I'm talking about really royal patronage, so that he built monasteries, and he built temples, and he built roads, and he built edicts in Ephesus that had stone carvings of all the teachings of the Buddha. And so many people from other religions decided that they would become Buddhist monks, not for the teachings of the Buddha or following the life of the Buddha, but rather doing it so that they could get the largess that the Sangha was benefiting from the royal patronage. That was when it got really big, really too fast.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that was then the students became teachers of the students.
Mm-hmm.
That many of them were becoming monks without going through the transition to become noble. That before that time, almost the entire Sangha was noble, with maybe 10% of them actually becoming arahats. But the nobility was right, and that the ability for them to maintain the organization was strong, because the number of students that were coming in meant that the student-to-teacher ratio was very, very excellent, to where there was probably as many teachers as there were students, as opposed to a bunch of students getting together and deciding that what the teacher was teaching was not correct, which is what happened in the time of Asok. So, that was when they had the third council. The second council was really nothing. It was just a bit of a dispute about the Vinaya. But the third council, they began to have coded questions about who was going to be led into the third council. The biggest mistake that was made with it is that they held this council in the capital because of the royal patronage. There's the capital, and there's the emperor, and there's the support and all of that. And let's have the, if they had it held out in the woods at Saranath or to Deer Park or in Varanasi or someplace, it would have not been a problem. But they held it in the royal capital, which meant there was a lot of monks who wanted to be in that council, who could not answer the questions. They were not noble. They did not have noble answers to noble questions. And because of that, they were not allowed in to the council.
Oh.
And so you would say that, well, while you had a council of maybe 500 monks who were all arahats or at least noble, you had another 15,000 that were not allowed in. And so what they decided to do was to have their own council, and they called it the Mahasangha. The Mahasangha Council is what started Mahayana. Now that does not mean that all of Mahayana is non-noble. That's a ridiculous statement to make. Just look at the Dalai Lama, and that that destroys that immediately. So that within the Mahasangha or the Mahayana, there is still quite a lot of nobility.
Mm-hmm.
But the Western mindset has gotten to the idea that somehow that enlightenment is rare, or perhaps it hasn't happened for several hundred years or more. I've even heard. I see your smile. You probably heard such things like that. Is that true, Jim?
Heard such things, but I think it's heard quite a few things like that.
Right. Well, that's basically what we can go on as sour grapes.
Mm-hmm.
If you just understand that in the time of the Buddha, there were literally thousands. It's said that by the time the Buddha's death, there were maybe 20,000 monks, almost all of whom were noble, and of that, maybe 2,000 were arahat.
Mm-hmm.
But the Buddha himself said that the body of the Buddha is not the Dhamma.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to know the Buddha, know the Dhamma. If you want to know the Dhamma, you'll know the Buddha. The Buddha and the Dhamma are like that. The Dhamma has survived. The Buddha himself is dead. If the Dhamma had not survived, then those kind of statements would be correct. But in fact, through the lineage that I've had and through many other monks that I've met and known, I can tell you that the Buddha Dhamma is alive and well in Asia, though it's alive, it's almost non-existent in the West.
Sounds like a job for us.
Huh? Yeah, it's time for the Seattle group to start doing some stuff. And so I congratulate you guys, and I congratulate you, Noah, for getting some stuff started. This is a side point that I hadn't even considered. But this is exactly what we need. If people can begin to understand and start to live the noble teachings of the Dhamma, of the Buddha Dhamma, that it will be of great fruit and benefit to not only the people who are involved with it, but it will assist and aid the community. Wisdom, knowledge, and understanding will spread.
Yeah.
It spreads like fire. It does not spread like money.
Okay.
I'm really pleased that you guys are talking with it like this. It may, in fact, the next time you have a meeting on a whim, you can Skype to see if I'm on and I can talk to the larger group. I would like that also.
That popped into my head as well while you were talking. So we'll do that.
Yeah. I need
Good.
to...
Okay. Well, what I'm hoping, Jim, is that you can call it another time and I can give you a real Dhamma lesson.
Yes.
But right now, because of Noah sometimes being a little hard to get a hold of, I have a couple of things I want to go over with him, and I'm sure that you probably already know what we're talking about. That on Reddit.
Yeah.
I think that it was Daryl in Texas who had written, and that the topic header was the topic header of theory. And that about that same time I was reading an article on how there's a website called Prosper. And Prosper is a place where people can meet each other on the internet, not with Skype, but with writing stuff, for applying for loans. So some people have money to loan, and other people have they want to have a loan. And Prosper has been in business for, gosh, probably 10 or 15 years now. They've had some ups and downs, but what they've had is a rich history of loan applications where people have written stuff down. And so what they did was they did a word search and started comparing. And what they found out with it is if people said things like, I'm a Christian or God or any of that kind of stuff, those people were very highly likely not to repay their loans. And so that's one of the threads that I put there in that thing about dangerous theories. Because people who believe in God wind up wanting the God to take care of their problems for them rather than them solving their own problems, or better still, just dropping all of their problems altogether. So coming from that, those 2 points gave me the idea about dangerous theories, and so the next thing we know, we've got 12 and a half dangerous theories that I put together. And so that actually took us about a month to do that, with input from one of the students who was raised in India and other things like that. Daryl, in fact, was the one who wanted to make the connection between dangerous theories and beliefs. And so when we talked about publishing it, Noah and I decided that I was, not afraid that people are going to have some flack about it. Mm-hmm. But the only one that you've sent back was somebody who looked like that he was in the process of giving up his Christian religion, talking about that he had been a religious teacher. And the bigger thing that I caught was that he only complained about the dangerous theories when I was using Christianity as an example. But that I was not using Christianity for just dissing Christianity. I was just merely using it as an example. In fact, I could have taken all of the Christian examples out and put Islamic examples in and have even a stronger case. But he was unhappy about the fact that I was complaining about Christians. This indicated, but he's here on a Buddhist website. So the idea that I got was that this guy has got like 1 foot in the grave of Christianity, still up to his knee, and the other foot is tap dancing around other religions, trying to find a toehold where he can get out of Christianity. This gives me a lot of compassion for that guy, and in fact, I'd like to ask you a question. Did you ever post my response to him?
I did not yet.
Good. Or let us say, that's okay. Because, for one thing, he's not the kind of guy that we actually are looking for. Because he's still very much into that. In fact, what I would really hope for is people who have questions about it rather than just merely arguing and making put-downs and insults and whatnot like that. Has there been any other responses to?
There may be, and I'm thinking more procedurally about this now, as to how we can get this going. So I think it needs to be more of like, I'll just send you the response. As you return it, I will get it onto the board, and we'll just go back and forth and see how long we can engage people with that. And it's it will be a process of getting the conversation going. I think that will help it catch fire.
That would be good. I would
Yeah.
prefer, rather than jumping in on the board myself, to keep that
Yeah. No, it's better.
that lineage idea going. That it goes back. That I've got behind me, way behind me, the Buddha, and closer behind me, I have people like Ajahn Panyananda and Ajahn Po and Maru, and also Bhikkhu Buddhadasa behind them, etc., like that, so that we have this. And if I jump in, I think that will rob both you and the group itself from some of the benefit.
Yeah, I've seen from just a cause and effect standpoint, I've seen on these types of boards, teachers jump in, and it doesn't usually work. There's a communication gap. Usually,
Yes.
I'm sure on the side of the students, but still, nonetheless.
Well, also, it really is difficult to judge in those kinds of writings the frame of mind that someone will be in when he reads the response, based upon the frame of mind that we can glean out of his first response. That people go through changes. Everything is changing, and that I'm really glad that you didn't post that. As you know, I had consternations about it about whether to do it, because I think that we would want to take a more compassionate approach to this guy rather than the humorous approach. I took a humorous approach thinking that it would reach a wider audience, but I really did skewer this guy.
This is user share meta.
Oh.
Jim is aware of this person as well, so.
Yes.
Oh, you know this guy, huh?
We know a little bit.
Personally, but like I've seen some of his posts. Yeah.
We're in some of the same circles and, mutual acquaintances and such.
So he's actually in Seattle. That's amazing.
He is not. No.
Oh,
But he's,
okay.
he works with certain, meditation teachers, and then some of the people in our group work with the same teacher, that kind of thing. So there's some crossover there.
Well, I'm glad that you agree with me that we should keep myself in the background.
Yeah, I need to. I need to do a little bit of disciplining of myself too, to make sure I get the thing turned around with appropriate timing for a message board. So, yes.
Yeah, that's right. Neither one of us are much of a hurry or that but if we realize that, well, maybe we can stir the pot and get some interest by being a little more timely. I think that, because I've been more guilty of that than you have. I mean, look how long it took me to get a response to that thing in the first place.
It seems like it's a practice of, maybe this is the wrong part of me, but like of generosity, to just be efficacious in my communication about the Dharma, even if I don't feel like it in the moment, just to do it because I can recognize the necessity and meet it.
Well, I agree, but then there's the other way of doing it, and that is that if you don't feel like you're in the mood, then you may not say the things in the best way. That you might want to sit for a while or relax or even do it the next day. And the important thing for me is that I don't generally do a lot of thinking about those things, none at all hardly, until I'm back actually writing. But when I'm writing, maybe the idea that I had as I was going to sleep or whatever, I'll remember and put that in. As you can imagine, those 12 are actually 12 and a half, funny with the number 4.5 in there. That stuff would build up over time.
Yeah.
And that each one of them could have been longer than the entire thing if I had put the detail. What I wanted to do was just hit it, introduce it, and then pass it on so that this is more of an overall list. Because mostly what happens is that each one of them is hammered home and therefore take quite a lot of time. But while this list of 12 is not exhaustive, it really covers a lot of bases.
Yeah, and I think the context in which we're doing this is important too, which is that the goal being to transfer supramundane Dhamma through a one-on-one to get some people in front of you who can really drink it up, basically, not to publish a book, that kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
I mean, it's a dynamic, it's a fluid, So, yeah, that idea of being summarial is that makes sense for that.
Jim, I think that I mentioned this before to Noah, but I'll let you in on it, that mostly what I have found within the context of Buddhism is that they follow a 10-day course system that was set up with Ledi, Mahasi, and U Ba Khin back in the 1950s when Burma was going through the revolution of throwing off the shackles of the British rule. And that U Ba Khin was very, very high in the government. High enough that the equivalent would be like he was a chief accountant, so that would be like head of the Treasury Department, Secretary of the Treasury of the Burmese government in the 1950s was the kind of station that this guy had. So he had enormous flexibility, and that the 10-day course was designed for government employees. And that the government employees were, really what was going on is that the Burmese new government was in the process of throwing out of Burma all of the Indian bureaucracy that the British had brought in. When the British were finally, let us say, invited to leave Burma, Burma was left with a government of Indians. Which was not as, let us say, something that the new military junta of Burma didn't really appreciate, and so they eventually started kicking the Indians out. But to do so, that means that they had to bring in their own government, they had to bring in their own Treasury Department, etc., like that, and so this was how all of that got started. But I've come to the conclusion and have talked with Achan Po about this, that the 10-day meditation retreat that's become so popular in the West from that foundation is actually a failure. Doesn't work. It doesn't work in two ways. One is that there's a cultural problem that the Asians don't have so much. I think it has to do with the background, but it has this one particular point, and I'll work on this with you. But it's that point in time when you recognize that the mind has wandered away from the breath. Now, the instructions that Goenka would give is, never mind, start again. With a big smile on your face. Okay, well, you caught the mind wandering away. That's great, Yaha, I've caught the mind wandering away. Westerners don't do that. Westerners instead will start back into the hindrances of the mind, saying, oh my gosh, how hard this meditation is, or, oh, this is such a monkey mind, and this happens normally on day 6. On day 6 is the day when it's still too far away from the end of the course for the students to start planning their escape. But it's far enough into the course where the mind is beginning to settle down, And that's when the students begin to recognize that the mind really is a monkey mind. Why? Because in the beginning days of the meditation, they were catching it 4, 5, 6, maybe 10 times. Now they're catching it like 50, 60 times an hour. You know, every minute they can catch the mind wandering away because they're much more alert. That's when the real depression sets in, is when students really begin to understand how out of control their mind really is. And they don't like it because they've been told their whole lives how you should be able to control your own mind, to control your own feeling. Can't do it. And they realize with this practice that they can't, and so they go into a state of funk. The next thing that I would say also in that regard is that the center, the Goenka Center in California, has been operating for many years now, and they require the students to fill out a form about their meditation histories and all of that kind of stuff. In the past few years, they've done a lot of correlation of that, and what they've come to understand that in average, most of the students go 7 years between their first and their second retreat.
Whoa.
That means that they feel like that first retreat was a failure. Let me out of here. I don't want anything to do with meditation. But they'll come back to it when they get desperate or whatever, and they will come back and give it a second chance. That's not true in Asia. That the Goenka Center here in Bangkok, in fact, does quite a lot of repeat business. And I've also heard from Brenda, one of my friends, who's a really long-term resident at Wat Suan Mokkh. She's in China now, but will be coming back in August. She said that quite a lot of the students will move back and forth between Wat Suan Mokkh and do the retreats there in Thai, and then they'll go to the Goenka Center and do them there in Thai, and then they'll come back to Wat Suan Mokkh and do them in Thai again. And so the Thai people do not have so much of this issue of worrying and fretting over the fact that they can't control the mind. They already been Buddhist as a Buddhist culture, and so they're much more interested in gaining the benefits out of it, to where the Westerner seems that they don't like meditation because it proves to them that they're not as good as they thought that they were. But if you can accept that you're just an ordinary human being with an ordinary human mind that's not nearly as good as you would hope for it to be, then you can get some great benefit out of it. In other words, start from where you are. An example of that would be if your job is to push an elevator button and go to the top floor of a particular building in Florence, Italy, but you're in Seattle. Going to a building that's got an elevator in Seattle is not going to help. You got to start from where you are with a plan to get where you need to be. Okay? Yep. You can't say that I'm already in Florence when in fact you're in Seattle. Can't do that. All right, so we have to begin to understand that the human mind is basically a pile of crap. It's untrained. You know, in the West, we teach students how to manipulate automobiles, how to manipulate the stock market, how to manipulate PCs and laptops, but we don't teach them how to manipulate their own mind. And so that's what the real goal is to learn how to do that. And that gives rise to the problem of the 10-day course. Because we cannot go to the point of having an entire new group of people who are doing a retreat for the first time go all the way from a monkey mind to the state of nobility. In 10 days, it cannot be done by the Westerners.
But if we didn't have that hindrance of like just constantly beating ourselves up, then we could do it in 10? Or like do the nobility flip in 10?
let us put it this way. The Buddha practiced jhana before he became enlightened.
Mm-hmm.
That to become a jhana dude requires skills.
Yeah.
In order to do the second jhana, one has to go through the first jhana.
Mm-hmm.
And then do some exercises to move from the second jhana into the third jhana. But in the suttas, especially in the Anguna Nikara, or the numbered sayings, is where the Buddha says that you need to develop the skill of managing going into first jhana, maintaining first jhana, and coming out of first jhana. But that is only said for first jhana. It's not talked about in the second jhana. Now, many people will say coming out of first jhana, you've got only one of two things to do. You can either go into the second jhana, or you can come out of jhana altogether.
Mm-hmm.
But the right place to do it, if you can think of it like this, is that if you're going to come all the way out of first jhana, or let us say come out of first jhana, don't come all the way out, but go back into a state that is normally referred wrongly as access concentration. Have you ever heard the term access concentration?
Yeah, so you're saying go back into it?
Access concentration actually is defined as being free from hindrances, so that the mind is somewhat fit for work.
Uh-huh.
But in first jhana, where you have both the rapture and pleasure born of the seclusion of the jhanas, that makes the mind fully fit for work. In Sutta number 36, the Buddha actually states, why am I afraid of the... Because after he was doing the jhana, that's when he went to do the austerities. I guess that he went and did it with the Jains. But he was better than, because he was such a good jhana dude, he was also better at the austerities than any of the others. And he fasted down to the point of, you've probably even seen the fasting Buddha. If not, do Google fasting Buddha and then click on images, and you'll see that he was actually almost down to being a skeleton. That he had lost so much weight, but he was still eating just a little bit every day so that he could maintain himself while he was going into a state of physical starvation of the body. So that there was almost nothing left but bones. Skin and bones was all that was left. It was almost down to the point that he could put his hands around his waist and actually be able to touch his thumbs and his fingertips. So that's down to what, about 14-inch waist.
Mm-hmm.
So he was highly skilled in these practices before he became enlightened. He used these skills to become enlightened. But by doing so, he only needed the skill of first jhana. Because the first jhana is where we really begin to inspect what the mind is doing. In the second and higher jhanas, the mind is too still, too quiet to be able to really see how suffering is created. And so people who practice jhana, when they become jhana dudes, they want to stay in jhana all the time. They don't like going back to the ordinary mind. Well, people can't live in any society and stay in jhana 14, 16 hours a day.
I have a question. Isn't there also some type of sort of healing that happens in the higher jhanas, though? Like the resting, that doesn't it leave an imprint on the body that can be beneficial in some way?
Oh, I'm not saying that the jhanas are not beneficial, but I will say it like this. Would you like to practice jhana for years and years and years and then become enlightened? Or would you like to become enlightened now and then use the jhanas as a toy?
Yeah. I'll have that one.
Please.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a better way of looking at it. But there were vast numbers of people who were with the Buddha in the practice of the jhana. It was commonly done. And so when you go to the Dhammacakkappavanta Sutta, and realized that the 5 students that had been with the Buddha, they had known him, they had been doing the same practices as he, and that in the Dhammarato Sutta, what he was talking about was not the middle path between self-flagellation or self-torment and the kind of sensuality that you'll find in the brothels and in the bars.
Mm-hmm.
That basically the jhana dudes were looking for pleasures that they could get from their mind. And so the middle path of the Buddha is not a middle path between self-flagellation and the brothel. It's a middle path between the jhana dudes and the self-flagellators. Mm-hmm. That's what the real middle path is. And a lot of people never get that. When the Buddha talks about pleasure and is being hard on pleasure, he's actually being hard on the jhana dudes because they're not practicing correctly. They would rather spend their time in jhana rather than doing the real work they need to do of straightening out the mind moment by moment in the here now as we live our lives. That I do not expect either one of you or anybody in your group to wind up being a jhana dude, spending 14, 16 hours a day sitting in meditation. That I expect you guys to be able to live your lives.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Be able to go around and do whatever.
We're doing our best.
And yet, huh?
We're doing our
I
best.
said thank you, by the way, for not expecting that.
Okay, so that's an important quality is that to realize that jhana does have some great benefits to it. And so in the Dhammarato Sutta, one of those 5 students becomes noble right there on the spot. He gets it. But Westerners are not able to do that because, for one thing, they have not done the prerequisite of gaining the ability to see clearly because their minds are not free from the hindrances. So the most important quality that can be developed on the spiritual journey is to have a mind that's fit for work. And so that happens always at that point of when you recognize the mind has wandered away, start again. But Westerners instead will say, when the mind wanders away, oh my goodness, what a terrible mind this is. Oh, I don't like this. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Oh, woe is me. I'm not sure I'm doing the practice. I probably don't even have the right teacher. And then they're just back into that spinning mind that is full of ignorance, full of doubt, full of remorse. And that the really important thing is for you to say, never mind. Yeah, last minute, a second ago, my mind was filled with hindrances. Let my mind be filled with joy now. Let me throw those things out. You've probably heard of the concept of choiceless awareness.
Oh, yeah.
That's not what the Buddha practiced. That's not what Bhikkhu Buddhadasa teaches. That's not what I recommend. I recommend that you make some choices. When you recognize that the mind has wandered away from the breath, that you throw out whatever you were thinking about. Throw it out. Stop thinking about it. Make that choice. Clear your mind of whatever it was that was keeping you from being here in the moment and bring yourself back into this present moment. That's choiceful. Also, the word awareness has trouble with it. Because, in fact, the word sati means remembrance. Doesn't mean awareness. And any word that would be close to awareness, the Buddha uses the word investigation. So we want to have to remember to come back to this present moment and make an investigation of what's happening. This is the real way of practice, and that will gain great fruit. So, that's part of the reason why the 10-day meditation retreats are normally failures, is because the students fail to make that one point. Another reason why meditation retreats fail is because they are normally meditation retreats, not Dhamma retreats. In the sense that students are expected to be in meditation almost all the time, and so in that regard, they want to limit the students, the instruction of the student to be based around meditation, to make sure that the students are meditating correctly, rather than giving them the reason why that we want you to learn to meditate correctly, is so you can make this full investigation of the mind, so that you can investigate the body, so you can investigate your feelings, so that you can investigate the mind and its mind and all of the states of mind. And by doing that, you also have to investigate the Dhamma of the Buddha. And in order to do that correctly, you have to be free from hindrances. So the first thing to investigate is the hindrances. After that, you investigate the 7 factors of enlightenment. And then we go into the full, deep investigation of the Four Noble Truths. This can't be done in 10 days. Sorry. It cannot be.
I've got about a 15-day stretch coming up. Like, how's that looking? I've just started a sabbatical, like, day before yesterday. Okay, like maybe 3 days ago. And I've got 12 weeks that is going to be put towards as much Dharma as I can.
All right, well, what I would recommend then for you is the following. Number 1, stay in seclusion.
Okay.
No TV, no radio, no girls,
We're gonna
going
have to
out for eating.
Go out in just a second.
We're probably going to have to...
My girlfriend just walked in.
It's fine, yes.
This is Dhammarato.
Bring her over.
This is my teacher, Dhammarato.
Hello.
He's in Thailand.
You're in, wow, it looks beautiful where you are.
Well, that's because I live in paradise.
And I see that you're shirtless.
Thank you.
It's 'cause
I was just stating a fact, but sure, you're welcome. I think I just heard him say no girls the moment that I walked in.
Yeah.
Should I like moonwalk out of the frame now? Like.
No.
There's a skillful way to do it.
You're a human being.
That's true. That's correct. Yes.
Right. The girls that I'm talking about are the ones in his mind.
Oh, okay.
But those are all just dakinis.
Well, we're getting real in this conversation real fast. I love it.
Dhammarato's the realist.
Absolutely. In fact, that's one of the most important qualities of the Buddha, is that it's real.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime when you hear anything that's Buddha or quasi-Buddhist that doesn't have the ring of reality to it,
mm-hmm.
It's not the Buddha. It's the Buddhist religion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That the Buddha was a realist, and he had a real job to do, and that was finding a way for humans to learn to live happy lives, free from suffering, free from strife. And that one of the ways of doing that is by staying away from the things that cause suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And so we learn to seclude ourselves physically, so that then we can begin to see the distinction or the difference between what's on the inside of the mind and what's on the outside of the mind.
Mm.
And basically, what the entire spiritual journey is beginning to figure out more and more that who I thought I was, I am not. That's only old, learned, bad behavior that I got from somewhere else. and that the more we clean out, the more empty we get. That in fact, who you really are is a kind of emptiness that's capable of managing this present moment as it really is. This is the reality of the situation. That clocks and calendars are artificial in a way.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really exist. Time does not exist the way that we try to do it. That in fact, the real reason why there was a need for clocks in the first place was because shipping needed to find out where it was longitudinally. They could do latitude pretty well, but how far away they were, they needed clocks in order to be able to see, based upon the stars, what locations they were in. Mm-hmm. And so, since you're not out at sea, you don't need clocks anymore. If you can see, no clock. I don't have. And that causes trouble with a lot of students, because the students, being Westerners, they want to make appointments. Oh, I'll see you tomorrow, blah, 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 blah. Okay, and I always ignore that. I always tell the students, call when you want to call. If I'm available, I'll answer.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are now in this moment.
Yeah.
In this moment. It's always this present moment. There is no other time. The Buddha actually referred to himself as Tathagata. Have you heard that word before?
I have not. I personally have not.
That is, or I've heard.
Tathagata means the one who is gone thusly, or it means he's gone to the now, or the present moment. The actual Pali word that he's referring to is tatata, which means now.
Oh yeah. Alan Watts introduced me to that like long ago. That's where I first heard that.
Tatata, that means be here in this present moment. But most people live in the past. We dwell on the past. We remorse about the past. We think about how, and in fact, not only that, but we think about the past as a normal event. It was a normal event when it was happening, but when we refer back to it in our minds, we often will start to judge our behavior, thinking that people were thinking bad of us and other things like that. Try to fix the conversation, or I should have said this, or I should have said that. That's especially true after an argument.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people have an argument, they will go away, and each one of them will continue that argument in their minds. It also has the element of planning to it, because it's I should have said this, which means next time I see that person, I'm going to start this argument again so I can get this point made. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? The argument that we're having in our minds now, within that plan of the future, does not directly relate to what actually happens in the future. That the future is a new now based on the conditions of that moment, not the conditions of when I was planning.
Mm-hmm.
And so our arguments oftentimes don't have the weight in the new reality that they did when we were planning on it.
That describes
our plans are wonderful. Our behavior is ordinary, and then that ordinary behavior in the after it's over will begin to rehash and remorse and regret and worry over. So the Buddha recommends staying out of the past, stay out of the future, and stay in this present moment, to be here now. There's actually a whole set of sutras, one after another, that has that as a title. One fortunate attachment is to attach to this present moment. Now, many people who are interested in Buddhism, they think that they have to give up all their attachments. But that's not very wise. There are, in fact, some attachments that need to be given up because they create suffering. But there's a whole lot of things that we can attach to that do not bring suffering, and in fact will help us come out of suffering. And one of them is to attach ourselves to this present moment. Another one to attach to is a really, really big one, and that is to attach ourselves to the Four Noble Truths. Begin to see the Four Noble Truths everywhere. Another one is to attach ourselves to the Eightfold Noble Path as a real vehicle to ride around in.
I pictured like a bumper cart or something with a horn like.
Actually, in the Dhamma is referred to as a raft.
A raft?
A raft.
But you don't keep carrying it.
Right. Well, that's part of the point of it. But if you know that sutta is actually the simile of the snake, and that the simile of the snake and the simile of the raft go hand in hand. They're like sister similes. To where the simile of the snake is that if you grasp a snake wrongly, it'll turn around and bite you. You cannot pick it up by the tail. You cannot pick it up by the middle. That you've got to pick it up by the head. This is really, really true of the Dhamma. Most people will pick it up any old way they can, and it'll turn around and bite them.
Sounds like me.
In fact, the Buddhist religion is the source of getting bitten by the snake of the Dharma. But you've got to grasp it by the head. And what is the head of the snake of the Dharma? Anybody?
Suffering, happiness, the Four Noble Truths.
Well, all
You're
right.
just saying
right.
things now. You're just saying everything.
That's a valid response. One of them might
Right.
be.
I would go so far as to say that the head of the snake in this regard is anicca.
Oh, okay.
Everything is changing, and that's where we start. If you can pick up the Buddha Dhamma by the concept of
There you are in the
everything
past.
is in turmoil. This present moment is brand new because it is a result of hundreds of millions of cause and effect relationships that happened less than a moment ago. And so everything is in turmoil. In fact, I even like the word turmoil better than anicca because anicca sounds so bland. That everything is changing, everything is turmoil, and we can just leave it like that. It sounds so pleasant, you know. But when we recognize it, no, it's not like that. It's a turmoil. We're in the process of a bomb going off. That bomb started going off about 13.7 billion years ago, but it's still exploding. And that, in fact, things are getting more and more complex every second. And that we're in the process of being in turmoil. And what we need to do is to learn to live happily in that turmoil. That's the way to look at it, is anicca. Anicca vata samkara upatava yudamano ita jitava nerujante tesa vipassana sukho. This is, by the way, a funeral chant. And it ends with that death is the highest peace. Most people are afraid of death until they recognize that, well, before you were born, the world got along very happily without you, and it's going to get along very happily without you after you're dead. That what can you do to increase the joy rather than increasing the suffering? So, back to Jim, he was going to say that he wanted to spend about some time practicing the Dhamma, and I was just giving him some instructions on that when you came in. By the way, what's your name?
My name is Di.
Sarah?
Di. D-I. Just 2 letters. D-I.
G-I.
D-I. Di.
D as in dog.
Oh, Di. Okay.
That's correct,
All
yes.
right.
Yes.
Di. All right. Does that mean from Diana, or?
No, it's Vietnamese. It's part of a longer name that means exotic bird.
Oh, well, that's, by the way, a boot just dropped.
A boot just dropped?
Oh.
Yes, I've had a number of monk friends from Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
And that one of the things that I find so uniquely